friends, welcome back to the channel, and welcome to a video all about the P9. And if you saw from the title, the joke's on me. So let's get into what happened with my Navy Speedy P9, and yeah, I'll share the whole thing. So if you missed my video from a couple weeks ago, I posted a video that said, I think the title or the thumbnail was something like, did I just make the biggest mistake of my luxury career life, whatever you want to call it. And that video was about the fact that I was offered the Speedy in the Navy, or Indigo, I should say, P9, from my sales associate from Neiman Marcus, who has been fantastic. She was the one who I dealt with on the whole Capucines fiasco and everything, and she's just been lovely and great, and she knew that I really wanted this bag. And so I talked in that video about, I ended up turning it down, and I explained why. I think I need to go backwards a little bit because perhaps there was some confusion about like who and what and the dates and things like that. So I'm gonna rewind a little bit and kind of go through the timeline of how these things fell, okay? So I think it was maybe like in the February timeframe, something like that, is when the men's Louis Vuitton men's fall, winter, or autumn, winter, wherever, depending on where you live in the world, runway walked, okay? And we saw for the first time what the colors were going to be for the Speedies, for the P9s for this season. So there was a gold, there was kind of like not really an olive, it's sort of like I don't even know how to describe that green, but a green color, a gold, the navy, there's like kind of a dusty, kind of mauve-y pink. I don't remember if there's another color. But anyway, so that walked the runway, and as soon as I saw the navy, I was like, whew, Navy, hello, friend. I am a huge Navy fan, and it just goes so well in my wardrobe. Now, I mentioned in that video that when I first saw the bag walk the runway and when I saw the re-see pictures from, the next day. So if you're not familiar with how the runways work, is they do the runway show, and then the next day they have what's called a re-see. Basically, you are re-seeing, you are getting to see again the items up close, though, that walked the runway, okay? So they just have them out displayed, and you can actually see them up close and personal, as opposed to, from far away in a seat versus on the runway, right? And so there are lots of re-see pictures that float around Instagram, especially, and things. So I noticed it when I saw it on the runway, and then it was reiterated when I saw the re-see pictures that they had changed the color of the vachetta, the leather on the handles and the strap, all the trim, basically, right? So they had changed it from a kind of pre-treated color, which is what all of the other P9s have been, to almost this true brown color. And I don't even want to say like a super aged, it's almost like a color that I don't even really think vachetta gets to. I don't really know. It was almost more like a British tan kind of color, but even maybe darker than that. Anyway, and when I saw it, it definitely gave me pause. I was like, oh, I love the navy, but I don't know that I love the leather. I mean, I could say leather, the leather trim color choice, okay? But I thought, we'll see. Sometimes it's hard to tell. Sometimes when you see things in person, they look different. Sometimes things are very different when they produce it versus what it is on the runway, right? So I just knew that the navy looked amazing, and I would really like to see it in person and perhaps buy it. So Meredith very kindly arranged for us to have a VIP appointment while we were in Paris. Okay, so I think around the March or so, maybe April timeframe, I can't remember exactly when, a new kind of group chat thread was started. We have all these different WhatsApp group things going for the trip. And one of them was specifically for this VIP appointment that we were going to have. And it was basically at that time, it was Peter, Meredith, client advisor in Sydney, started it. And he was like, okay, as you guys are, seeing things that you might want to look at while you're in Paris, dump them in here, okay? Pictures. He said, if you can give me item numbers, that would be great, because that'll make it easier, whatever. So Peter was kind of doing it originally, and then they added the client advisor in Paris from the Vendôme store to it as well. So her name was Catherine, just so we have that all straight. So I think I literally was the very first person to drop a photo in that group chat, and that was for the P9. I was like, I absolutely want this, because we were told that the fall winter collection was going to drop kind of mid-July-ish. Now, we went second week to mid-August. Honestly, I didn't even know if it would be possible, like that they would even be still around, right? I mean, I had no idea, but I put it in there just, saying, hey, me, this is what I'd like. And then there were other things that, I put in, and obviously everybody else had many other things that we're putting in, other pieces of ready to wear and bags and whatever, and things like that. And then I think it was around the May time frame or so, we found out that the indigo color was not going to be part of the first drop. So the fall winter or autumn winter men's collection is coming in 2 drops. One that was dropping in July, and then another that was dropping in October. And so Peter let us know that the indigo was not going to be available during our appointment, because obviously if it's not dropping until October, we wouldn't be able to get it in August, any of us, right? Or any of the, So I was like, well, that's a bummer. And then so I added to the group chat, I said, well, I guess if the navy is not going to be available, then can you see if you could get me a red 25? Because by that time I had gotten the red 30. I knew it was too big, but I knew I absolutely loved the color, and I thought I would absolutely love to have that in a 25. Now, just again, as a piece of clarification, because there are 2 different sales associates that were involved in kind of my history here. So the red P9 30 was from my Nordstrom client advisor, okay? The person who offered me the navy 25 was my Neiman Marcus client advisor. So when we found out that the navy wasn't going to be available, I then reached out, because I was working at that time then with Jade, who's my client advisor at Neiman's, about the whole Capucine thing, right? And I mean, that was in May, and it was this whole thing with the straps and whatever, and finally decided in June to, send it back, whatever. But in those conversations, especially because, the whole Capucine thing was just not going great, I mentioned to her, can you please put me down on your list to be considered for the Navy 25? And she did tell me, like, they do it kind of differently there. And anyway, so, I mean, it didn't sound like there was a huge opportunity for me to get it, but it wasn't going to be until October. So I thought, okay, I don't really have to think about this right now. We'll see what happens in Paris. If I get the red one, then maybe I would just tell her forget about the navy that was going to be coming out in October, but there you are. Well, then in July, about probably a month, maybe 5 weeks before our trip, we found out that actually the navy was going to come in the first drop. And I will tell you that the information that we were given in the chat by the Louis Vuitton client advisor in Paris was essentially that she could get one navy P9, but that she would also have some other colors available, so if other people wanted to see them. So at that point, I never want to count my chickens before they're hatched, right? Which is why, in all truthfulness, I felt like when I made that video about did I make a mistake, I didn't know 100% that I was going to be getting the navy in Paris, but based on the comments and the things in the group chat, it seemed as though it were pretty certain. Again, was I going to stake my kids' lives on it? No. But I felt like when I did turn down the navy, the one from my Neiman Marcus client advisor, that I had a very good chance of getting it in Paris. Would I have said 100%? No, because I don't think I would say 100% on anything. But it did seem like it was pretty much a signed deal. So now you have kind of the order of operations, right? So I had asked my client advisor here in the United States kind of around the May-June time frame. We then found out in July that the navy was actually going to be potentially available during our appointment. But again, I'm not going to tell my client advisor here that I'm not interested in it because, again, I'm not 100% sure that I'm going to get it. And honestly, the way she was talking, honestly, I thought the likelihood that I would get offered that bag would have been slim to none. And also the way she described it, it made it sound like if I was able to get the bag, it would be later, like maybe in October kind of time frame. Like I wouldn't sort of qualify in like the top echelon clients that would be offered the bag. So I guess my point is I felt like, I didn't really need to say anything to anybody because nothing was going on at that time. So obviously, surprise, surprise, when she reached out to me like a week before our appointment to say, okay, I have one to offer you, do you want it? And as I said, at the time, the intel was that I was pretty sure that I was going to be able to get it in Paris. And also, as I mentioned in the previous video, when she offered it to me, I immediately said, oh my gosh, first of all, I'm thrilled and I am so sorry that I am going to be turning this down, and explained the situation. And her response was, oh my God, if I were you, I would absolutely get it in Paris. Like there was no hard feelings, nothing. And I hope everybody understands that when you turn down a P9, it's like turning down a Birkin or a Kelly or whatever. That bag is sold probably within 2.3 minutes of you saying no, right? There is an entire line of people behind you that they sell it to. And even though, as I said, the sales associates were completely different on the P930 versus the client advisor who offered me the navy P9, I guarantee you that the second that red 30 hit the floor, that it was sold, like I said, within about 10 minutes of them opening the box and, getting it back again. So, this whole thought about, oh, they're losing their commission, whatever, they're not losing commission. Like I said, they just turned around and sold it to somebody else. So, I'm not worried about my client advisors. And I will also tell you that client advisor, when I talked to her about returning it, I mean, she knew that I was struggling internally about that bag because I loved that bag. It was gorgeous, but it was just too big and too heavy. And she's like, you should not keep a bag that you don't love, that you're not gonna wear. She's like, that's ridiculous. And she can say that because she knows she can turn around and sell it, like I said, within 10 minutes of opening the box. So anyway, both of them were so kind. So let's get to Paris. So while we were in Paris, our appointment was on Tuesday. And on Saturday, Amelia had said to me that she and Bestie was there with her. They had gone and were shopping, like when we went to the Eiffel Tower and went to Dior and things, they were kind of doing their own thing, which was totally fine. But anyway, we were on our way to dinner in the cab, and she's like, hey, we saw the P9. Now, they didn't see the navy, they saw the green, but at least I could see a picture, an actual live picture of what the leather handles looked like. And she's like, so what do you think? And I was like, I don't know. I said, it definitely is giving me pause. I said, it kind of feels, and she said, masculine? And I said, yeah, exactly. And she's like, that's exactly what I thought. She's like, when I saw it, she's like, I don't know that Lisa's gonna like this. And so I started having some second thoughts right then. And so this was like 3 days before the appointment, our VIP appointment. And in fact, even the next day, I'll pop actually a screenshot here of Emily, who started as a subscriber and now is one of my very, very good friends. She had texted me on Sunday and she was like, hey, have you had the appointment yet? And I'm like, no, it's not until Tuesday. And then you'll see her, I said, okay, don't shoot me, but I'm kind of thinking maybe I might not get the P9. She knew about the client advisor in Paris and, that it was pretty much a sure thing. Again, I never like to count my chickens, but whatever. It seemed pretty much like a done deal. And you can see her response, which was, I'm not really surprised. So, one of the things had to do with the leather. It did kind of seem a little masculine to me. Two, I didn't love the fact that they had changed the interior leather to stripes. Don't really understand why they did that. And then the third thing was, and I think this was also in my text to her, is I felt like if I got the P9, I really wasn't going to be able to get anything else. And did I really want to basically blow my entire Paris budget on one bag when there really were quite a few pieces of ready to wear that I wanted to get? I wanted to look at other bags and see what else was out there. You know, new collections were dropping. I loved that new aubergine collection that you guys saw me try on at the 57th Street store, that speedy trunk. I really was hoping to see side trunk in that new leather. It was just gorgeous. So there were these things playing through my mind, and I hadn't decided when I was texting with Emily that 100% for sure I don't want it. I wanted to see it so I could make that decision and try it and see how it looked and see the leather in person. You know, obviously I saw Amelia's pictures of it, but again, things can look different in photographs and things. So I was not going to make a decision until I saw it in person and I had it in my hot little hand and I could make that decision for myself. Well, like I said, joke's on me because I never got the opportunity. So we had a lovely day, and obviously you'll see the vlog when it comes, but we had lunch. I don't even know if I filmed lunch at all. I definitely filmed in the gift shop. So we went to the Dream Cafe, which is right near the Pont Neuf Bridge, which is what the P9 is named for. P9 stands for Pont Neuf, which is 9 in French. They do have kind of a museum there, but unfortunately it was closed for a few months for renovations, so we did not get to do that. That was originally on the schedule, but we did have a lovely lunch, and then we did the gift shop for a while and looked at things, and that was really fun. And then we went to Vendôme to have our appointment. And so we met with the original client advisor, Catherine, and then she had somebody there also helping her, so that as we, you know, went and looked around, that as we found other things that we wanted, she had somebody else helping her to get things. But we went up to the room. So we went up to this beautiful VIP room, which again, I'll just insert like a shot here so you can kind of get the lay of the land of what it looked like. But it was lovely, and you know, there was champagne and they offered us other drinks and they brought in some cake and things like that. And there were some rails set up around the room, as well as all sorts of bags and things, you know, things that we had asked for, a lot of things that we hadn't, but they just kind of brought up to, you know, kind of upsell, whatever. And so I saw a rack actually that pretty much I could tell was mine because it had the puffer coat. So spoiler alert, you probably know where that's going. But anyway, it had basically quite a few pieces of the ready to wear that I had asked to potentially try on. And so we're all standing there in a group and she says, "So who is Lisa?" And I said, "I am." And I thought what she was going to say is, "Okay, your rack is over there, and so those are your things," whatever. Because like I said, there were several racks, and one kind of looked like it was Amelia's because it had some jackets on it that she had asked for. And so I thought she was going to kind of go through and be like, "Okay, Lisa's, yours is over there, Claire's, yours is over there, Victor," you know, like kind of go through. But no. I said, "I am." And she's like, "So I wasn't able to get the navy P9. I tried, but I couldn't get it." And honestly, you guys, my initial reaction when she said it was, it's okay. Like, I honestly wasn't really that disappointed, but I will say, again, sort of based on what I said earlier, even, you know, having seen the picture that Amelia had taken of the green one, and they did have the green one there. They had the kind of dusty pink one in the 25, and then they had the green and the 30. Beautiful bags, but I did at least get to see the leather in person. Still would have been nice to see it on the navy because, you know, the leather looks different depending on what the color is that it's compared to. But I would have liked to have seen it in person so that I could have made the decision for myself to either buy it or not buy it. But obviously the decision was made for me. So yeah, so like I said, the joke's on me. I turned it down and decided that I was gonna just wait, because if you had asked me to put a number on it, like a percentage number of my sureness that I was going to get the P9 or be able to, you know, see the P9 and have the opportunity to buy the P9 in Paris, I probably would have said like 98, 99. I didn't think that I was taking a whole lot of risk, I guess is my point, when I turned down the one from my Neiman's client advisor. But 1% to 2% is still 1% to 2%, and there you are. So spoiler alert, there will be no P9 unboxing. There is a bag from Louis Vuitton though, so as Deb would say, hang fire or hang about or just hang on, as we say in the United States, for the unboxing. That in of itself is also a whole nother story. But yeah, I just wanted to catch you guys up. I know this was very long-winded, and I'm sure I will receive some comments of you deserved it, and you know, you got what was coming to you, or I don't know. But again, I don't feel like I misled anybody. I don't feel like I, you know, took this opportunity or took commission away from anybody by, you know, turning down the P9. Will I ask my client advisor? I mean, I do need to follow up with her. She'll probably laugh when I tell her, hey, guess what? After all that. But I don't know. I love the bag I got. So TBD as to whether I see if I can still get my hands on it. I will say I'm a little reluctant to do it because I do think that there is somewhat of a reasonable chance that I could see it in person and then not like it, and then, you know, I would end up returning it, which is, you know, as somebody said in the comments of the previous video, is our prerogative. That is what the return policy is for. And especially in the case of Louis Vuitton, where you end up paying for these bags sometimes months in advance, and you have no idea what it looks like and you haven't been able to hold it, they're going to expect some returns, right? Because you're not trying on a bag and then them saying, okay, well, this one is display only, so we will order you one, right? It is totally based on seeing something on the runway and then maybe some stock photos if you're lucky. So yeah, I mean, it's the cost of doing business. Like I said, I have absolutely no doubt that my client advisor at Neiman's, you know, texted somebody else and that bag went within a heartbeat of me saying no. But I truly, truly appreciate that she did think of me and offer me the bag. So I'll have to let her know what happened. But anyway, that's my story. And like I said, I'll be anxious to read some of the comments. I'm sure the one individual who wasn't too pleased with me will, I'm sure, sound off and, like I said, probably say you got what you deserved. But anyway, I feel okay about it. Hopefully sort of the explanation of the timeline, and like I said, not the same client advisor, so hopefully that makes a little more sense as well. But yeah, that's it, and we will get back to the Paris vlogs after this, and then some unboxings. I kind of like what Deb is doing, which is sort of unboxing something during each vlog. So I'll have to look at my upcoming vlogs and see if that kind of makes sense to do that. I will say that I did leave my purchasing until pretty much the very end. I definitely am one of those people who needs to see all of my options before I make those decisions. That happened to me the last time I was in Paris too. Like, I was purchasing literally the late morning, early afternoon of the day that I was flying out, and you'll see. Same thing happened here. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. It helps the algorithm. And if you like this kind of content, click the subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you will know every time I upload a video. If you want to keep on watching, there'll be one in the corner here you can click on. And wherever you are, I hope you are having an amazing day or evening. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.